This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
China's top political advisory body concludes its annual meeting. How African countries are coping after deciding to ease coronavirus restrictions. And Nigerian man overcomes great odds to establish a successful business. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe, also lined up this hour. South Africa to resume alcohol sales next week. And Kenya's Team Cheruiyot to battle Norway's Team Ingebrigtsen in virtual Oslo Diamond League showdown. We begin in Beijing, where China's top political advisory body has concluded its annual meeting. The chairman of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or the CPPCC, detailed its work over the past week or so.
The CPPCC members carefully reviewed documents and conducted in-depth consultations and communications. Discussions focused on normalization of pandemic prevention and control, as well as economic and social development. In order to achieve these tasks, members put forward political advice and established common sense. This shows the important role of the consultative body in the national governance system.
Wang said this year's session highlighted China's solidarity in the midst of a global health crisis. He said the CPPCC should gain in strength from China's handling of the outbreak. He said people from all walks of life should look to advance the idea of socialism with Chinese characteristics. The chairman also explained the relevance of the CPPCC.
作为中国共产党领导的政治组织和民主形式
As a political organization body in a democratic form under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, the CPPCC takes advantage of consultations and democracy under the socialist system. We effectively organize parties and people from all ethnic groups, all walks of life, to discuss national issues. We put forward political advice and establish consensus. This helps integrate the CPC's leadership and multi-party cooperation. This helps integrate full promotion of democracy and implementation of centralized and orderly political participation. This helps integrate the enhancement of unity and the implementation of our work.
For more on this, we're joined by CGTN's Lucy Rui in Beijing. Lucy Rui, China's top political advisory body has been having its closing meeting today. What's the latest on this?
Yes, so the CPPCC meeting this year has officially ended, and the CPPCC members have been discussing and reviewing proposals on China's public health and economic growth. And this year's chairman, Wang Yang, said that the country is going to normalize the pandemic prevention and control in China. This means that it's going to be a routine part of the job of the government to supervise the public health situation in China even after the pandemic. And another highlight is China's economic recovery, because this year the country didn't set the GDP target for itself. So, and also the political policy tone was tweaked from planning out to playing by ear. So there is a feeling that this pandemic is going to change the working style of the China's policy making. Peninah.
And what more should we expect going forward as China's political season comes to a close?
Yes, so the future is still packed with uncertainties because we don't know whether or when the second wave of COVID-19 will come, and actually no one is actually ready for that, and that is why China still needs this room for its policy flexibility. And also China needs to work on creating more jobs. And this year we see that the SMEs are having a hard time right now, but they are the major powers in China to hiring more people. And this year, we have this record high number of fresh graduates from college. Where are they going? And also the work report of the government says that we're going to create 9 million jobs. And who are going to make this job? So this goes back to the stories of SMEs. They really need the supportive policies from the government to help them stay in business. Peninah.
All right, Lucy Rui, live for us there in Beijing. Many thanks. Now, politicians across Africa have been closely following China's two sessions. Khalid Sayed, the provincial chairperson of South Africa's the ANC's Youth League in the Western Cape, shares his views about China's efforts to eradicate extreme poverty.
Having been to China, having visited China on 3 occasions already in the recent past, we have seen what has been happening. That there is a gradual eradication of poverty in the country and a creation of wealth amongst more Chinese people than before. And I think also the entry into what I do like is the strengthening of rural economies, in China. That speaks to this aspect. This shows that most definitely there's a superiority in terms of the approach that the Chinese leadership has taken. It shows the superiority of the socialist system. Many of the reforms that we've looked at are all orientated around improving the lives of the Chinese people. It speaks to even improving the healthcare system, because COVID has most definitely created challenges. So most certainly the approach and trajectory that the Chinese government has taken, particularly under the current leadership of Comrade Xi Jinping, has indicated a people-centered approach. And I think if more and more countries in the world and governments adopt a people-centered approach, we will most certainly have a more harmonious society to live in.
Despite many countries grounding flights because of the COVID-19 pandemic, Ethiopia's national carrier has chosen to remain in the skies. 3 months after the virus hit the continent, Ethiopian Airlines is now the main connections between Africa and other continents. It's also been transporting much-needed medical supplies donated by China. CGTN's Coletta Wanjohi reports.
Mahi Ismail is at the Bole International Airport in Addis Ababa to receive his consignment from China. His company is donating these medical supplies to the Ministry of Health to assist in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic.
Our Chinese partners also have, a big step in Ethiopia, and they want to help Ethiopia. So we collaborated together, and they are the ones who arranged all the purchases and all the logistics in China to get all this equipment for Ethiopia. So it's a good example of how, not only within our company, but it can help the whole country from China.
In another wing of the cargo section, humanitarian workers are sorting out medical supplies. They have been donated by the Jack Ma Foundation to be distributed to African nations.
This is almost today more than 20 countries. We are about to ship all to member states, and more than 13 type of commodities, health supply commodities, including ventilators, PPE, thermometer scan, and also some screening materials.
All these consignments are being shipped by Ethiopian Airlines. Originally, cargo transportation accounted for less than 20% of the airline's business, with only 10 cargo aircrafts. But amid the coronavirus pandemic, the company has become the biggest cargo carrier to and from the continent.
Ethiopian Airlines was quick and agile, flexible to move to cargo. All its attention, management attention, focus, resources, energy. We have also retrained people from the passenger side to cargo. We have also removed passenger seats from our passenger airplanes so that we can use for cargo, about 22 of them. So effectively, we have more than doubled our cargo capacity. That is why today we are managing the crisis within our own resources. We have not taken money from anyone, from any external sources. We have not also borrowed liquidity from any banks.
The airline says China remains a major client for its cargo business.
As you know, there are a lot of projects going on in Africa, and these projects are Chinese investment or joint venture investment. So it would have affected the African economies significantly if suddenly the link was discontinued. So even now, you know, in most African countries, you go to the airport, you see Ethiopian Airlines airplane, maybe alone. But we are still delivering medical supplies and also key industrial imports and also our African exports to Europe, Middle East and Asia.
But the company is not looking at cargo as a profit-making venture. Despite the increase in cargo business, the airline says it might suffer a loss of at least $1 billion by June because of the sharp decline in passenger ticket sales. Normally, Ethiopian Airlines flies to more than 100 international destinations. It is currently only operating 10 of these routes. But once the pandemic comes to an end and airspaces reopen, the airline is confident that it will be resuming passenger flights within the continent and beyond. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Ethiopia's industrial parks have created close to 100,000 jobs within the past decade. China has played an integral part in helping the country develop its industrial sector. The CEO of Ethiopia's Industrial Parks Development Corporation has been highlighting how China has helped build this infrastructure. CGTN's Gurum Chala now brings us this exclusive interview.
Well, for Ethiopia's industrial parks development, a key role has been played by China and the Chinese companies as well, from construction to actual involvement in production itself. Where are we now, and how do you really evaluate the overall industrial parks engagement with Chinese companies and the government of China as well?
Yeah, as we all know that we got this experience from China first, so the Eastern industry is a good example for us to enhance and to build more industrial park in our country. So mainly the relationship is not only for the investor side, but as well the construction side as well. So most of our industrial park have been built by the Chinese company, and it was more effective, and we try to deliver on time. And the second thing is about the investors. So every year there is a progress of investors. More foreign investors have been coming, visiting our parks, but most of them are returning with the Chinese investors. So we can say that every year there is a progress of 13% of growth that the investors of China have been investing in Ethiopia. So it's a good opportunity to rely with this system, and Belt and Road Initiative also create an opportunity to express and to show the interest of Ethiopia, especially in the industrial park. So industrialization is our target. So this is the only key point of turning that we can change our economy. So we are engaging with them, and we are getting more opportunity.
Also in the industrial sector, we all know that China has been a front runner, and Ethiopia has a lot that has been learned out of the Chinese experience. What can you tell us about this?
We are getting plenty, especially let me focus on the industrial park because they have experience of more than a decade. They were investing on the industry, and they were focusing on a specialization. That was a big experience that we get from them. So they are enhancing their local markets. They were enhancing the local investors as well. That's a linkage that they have, business to business linkage. That's also a good experience that we have to share it. And the second thing, they have a plan. Like they have a strict plan that they will follow the coming 20 years, 30 years. That's also a good strategy that the coming generation know what to do and when to do. So this is also an experience that we learn. And the third thing is like they are focused on timing. Timing is a critical for our sector, for the industrial park. So if we are not mitigate or like engaging or enforcing to build a new short period of time and engaging with the investors, that's also a challenge. So we want to, there's also an experience of they have in solving a challenge in a short period of time. They are all stakeholders are engaging as a one party. That's also an experience. So it's a huge experience that we are sharing. We're also learning, and we are applying that also. We want to learn more.
Do you really imagine, or do you expect more Chinese investments to come on your way so that the industrial development plan of Ethiopia can be successful as soon as possible?
Yeah, we're expecting much bigger than that we see the last year, because most of our industrial park have been built by government. Now we are going to outsource it privately. So the private industrial park is major turning point for us. Not only that, not only producing garment, but also engaging a horizontal infrastructure. So we are expecting to have more companies on pharmaceutical sector, on chemical sector, in different sectors that we are importing most of our material from outside. So it will be substitute this issue as well. So we are expecting more investors to build, to own their own private industrial park. Even if there is any opportunity, we want to sell our industrial park as well. So we want them to be a part of this and to share their experience, to build their own, and to enjoy the investors' incentives in this country. I don't think there is an incentive which is rely with a big opportunity, because we create a plug-and-play environment, we support infrastructure, and there's also a competitive young labor, because most of our population is more than 75% are young. They are competitive, they are very quick learner, so it will be a good opportunity for them to come. So we are expecting much bigger person to come to visit, to invest in this country.
May 26th marked a special anniversary for the diplomatic ties between China and Burkina Faso. The day marked 2 years since the countries re-established their diplomatic relations. Due to the current COVID-19 pandemic, the Chinese embassy commemorated the anniversary online.
It gives me great pleasure to be able to meet you on this special day. This year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm addressing you online, but nothing, no distance, can prevent the bringing together of the hearts of our two peoples. This pandemic is a disaster that is coming suddenly and is happening all over the world. I express my sincere condolences to all the victims and my deepest consolation to their families and loved ones. I extend my respect and admiration to the medical personnel in our two countries and around the world. They have fought and continue to fight on the front lines, day and night without respite, against COVID-19. It is our fighters on the front lines who are saving lives in the face of this common enemy. Their selflessness and sacrifice brings us closer to the day when final victory over this disease will be proclaimed. Celebrating the anniversary of our union on this occasion carries special significance. It is often said that it is in misfortune that one recognizes one's true friends.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take our first break this hour. Coming up, how African countries are coping after deciding to ease coronavirus restrictions. And a Nigerian man overcomes great odds to establish a successful business.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Brazil has for the first time surpassed the US in COVID-19 daily death toll. A US travel ban on Brazil is also now being implemented. Paulo Cabral has more from Sao Paulo.
The COVID-19 infection curve still pointing upward here in Brazil right now. Now this country has the second largest number of people infected in the world, only after the United States. And also, according to figures released on Monday, there is more people dying every day of COVID-19 here in Brazil than anywhere in the world. Here in the state of São Paulo, the richest in Brazil, the public health system is already stretched thin, with over 90% of capacity already occupied in public hospitals in the city of São Paulo.
We have now 40 intensive care beds, and in the next few days we will set up 10 more, and we already have patients waiting for them. Total collapse is certainly near us. I don't think it will take more than 15 or 20 days to take the hospital's total capacity taken.
Mas isso tudo em função do crescimento.
As the pandemic spreads since late April, 11 out of our 24 hospitals destined to COVID-19 cases are already over 90% full, and 4 of them are 100% taken. So we are at a very serious moment of the pandemic here in our city.
No travelers originating from Brazil will be admitted in the United States from this Tuesday night. The ban was announced on Sunday by the US government. Actually, initially it would be enforced from Thursday on, but then it was anticipated and it's going to be enforced from Tuesday night. That has to do with the fact that South America is being considered by the World Health Organization as now the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic around the world, and Brazil is the country with the largest number of cases. We have this travel ban from the United States, but also there are other countries that are limiting the entry of Brazilians, like, for example, Colombia, Paraguay, and Uruguay, all countries that have borders with Brazil here in South America. Paulo Cabral, CGTN, São Paulo.
On to the latest on the spread of the coronavirus in Africa. So far, there are over 119,000 confirmed cases on the continent. Over 3,000 people have died, while 48,924 people have recovered. There are 61,566 active cases across the continent. While many countries have been easing restrictions, some are reporting more new cases. Kenya is one of the nations that have been reporting higher numbers of new confirmed cases. On Monday, the East African nation reported 72 new cases, even as local media report on expected gradual reopening of the economy. This brings the total number of cases to 1,348. South Africa has also announced the reopening of places of worship from the beginning of June. The number of worshippers will be limited to 50 per session. The Southern African nation has seen over 24,000 confirmed cases and over 12,000 recoveries. Côte d'Ivoire has reopened schools after weeks of interruption due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The West African country is one of the first on the continent to restart education. Authorities say there is nothing to fear, but many students remain apprehensive. Walkis Tanyabo has that story.
It has been 2 months away from school for these pupils and students. As they report back, circumstances have drastically changed. All students must wear face masks and have their temperature taken before stepping into their respective schools. Classrooms are also arranged to reflect a physical distancing rule. Despite these measures, some are still apprehensive.
I'm very scared. I'm really scared of catching this virus. However, I'm glad that measures have been put in place here in our school. We have hand sanitizers and our temperatures are being recorded every now and then. I hope everyone respects the rules put in place.
Frankly, we are worried, and that is why we are doing things gradually. We have resumed classes, but we notice that not all students are back. Schools have reopened, fine, but we do not know how students will behave.
When the government ordered closure of schools in mid-March, Abidjan was the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak in the country. But days of disinfection and dealing with recorded cases has created some assurance for the nation. Chinese doctors were also called in to help in the fight against the disease. Now the government is reassuring its citizens that the worst could be behind now. Teachers and school administrators are leading the way.
We used to take care of small ailments like headaches, fever and such. But with the pandemic, we have scaled up checkups and monitoring at all entry points of the school. We are enforcing hand washing and sanitizing.
It's a bit of a challenge for now, but we're doing what's in our power to enforce social distancing as recommended by the Ministry of Health. We have also split lessons so that only one student is allowed per desk. We are also teaching them to respect these measures.
Despite these assurances, some schools remain shut. CGTN.
South African authorities have been working with mathematical modelers to try and predict coronavirus infection trends. Angela Kopla speaks to the convener of the modeling consortium.
As South Africa fights the coronavirus on several fronts, the authorities are working with mathematical models in their push to predict how many people will be infected and how many hospital beds will be needed.
It's not an academic exercise. To be clear that the intention really is here to provide credible decision support as best we can to given the uncertainties in the epidemic.
The mathematicians developed a model using experts from a wide range of disciplines, including epidemiologists, demographers, virologists, vaccinologists, and public health specialists.
Where we sit at the moment, though, is that under almost all scenarios, our models predict that our ICU bed capacity, which was 3,300 beds approximately in public and private sector combined in the country prior to the lockdown, and which is being increased during, the Department of Health has taken a number of steps to increase ICU bed capacity. But even despite those efforts, we're going to substantially exceed the need for ICU bed requirements, possibly as early as mid-June in some provinces or early June, but certainly by late July or August, we're going to have exceeded the demand for the ICU capacity.
The projected death toll from the coronavirus is estimated at between 40,000 and 45,000 people by November.
There have been some criticisms on the models and projections saying that hasn't been seen elsewhere. Given our population age structures, we might be exceeding, perhaps a lower number of deaths might be expected. Others have said we are underestimating our infected fatality rate.
Regardless of the criticism, the model will be shared with the public. A decision that didn't come easily, as authorities were a little concerned that the projections might scare people.
It's essential for members of the public to be able to hold us accountable for the types of strategies and interventions that we implement. And in order to do that, it is important for the public to have access to the information which may or may not be informing some of those strategies. While the models provide projections of the numbers of cases and deaths and ICU beds required, it's not set in stone. That trajectory will be determined not only by the actions of government or what government does to people, intervention that government makes, but the actions of each one of us.
While the modeling is all about the data and the statistics, it's important that we don't forget about the human side and make sure that people actually take all the precautions to prevent a spike in infections in the future. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Hillbrow, South Africa.
Meanwhile, Cape Town's oldest township is known for being a battleground during the apartheid days, but residents there have recently been battling a different enemy, COVID-19. CGTN's Travis Andrews paid Langa Township a visit and filed the following report.
Lockdown level 4 in South Africa. It's become the new normal, a time when sales of tobacco and alcohol are forbidden, and a curfew means everyone must be indoors by 8 p.m. In Langa, a township just outside of Cape Town, residents have become lockdown weary and eager to head out more frequently. That includes Ntalo Jordan, who runs a popular local eatery, which has been struggling recently. amended regulations allowed for a partial reopening of restaurants. But like many, Jordan is looking forward to another downgrade to that big number 3.
Business has changed. The sales are no longer the same. Because if you have a sit-down restaurant and then now you must do deliveries and people are cooking at home because they don't have anywhere to go. So it's a restaurant, business has changed a little bit. That means you have to be more creative. It challenges you to be more creative, create special, create cheaper dishes and all that. But margin-wise, business has changed.
But many others here are also eagerly awaiting greater freedom of movement that level 3 may bring. After all, they've been largely indoors for more than 7 weeks.
The community is looking forward to level 3 because most people, they want to move around to do their own things. Some of them, they want to go for shopping. Some want to go to hospitals. And there are so many things that we must do that we've been locked inside the houses, unable to do. Now we'll be moving more frequently than before.
A local car wash is just one of many others that have begun to prepare for an ease in restrictions. It employs workers who are mainly unemployed youths from the area, and their business is beginning to pick up. Not all residents here in Langa are overjoyed by the prospects of moving to level 3 lockdown regulations. Some believe the community just isn't ready.
If people can listen, because some of the people, they don't listen, you see. They don't care about safety. Safety comes first, then other thing comes second. You see, according to the people, you can see, look at those kids there. They don't have masks, and they're playing on the road. So, because they're supposed to have masks.
For now, all eyes will be on the government's next move and the shift to lockdown level 3, which is expected to take place at the beginning of June. But many are eager to know what bans may still remain in place. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Many countries have made it compulsory to wear masks in public to prevent the spread of COVID-19. On the African continent, there is a trend to make masks stylish. Local tailors and designers are combining style and safety by creating colorful masks with African fabrics. Let's take a look.
There was a big shortage, we realized, of masks, that can be usable every day without having to throw it away. So that's what brought about the idea. But at the same time, you seeing that masks are going to be an everyday thing, you want to mask in style, so to say.
In the beginning of the pandemic, I thought that this was going to last just maybe a few months. Now I do believe that in the next 2 years, maybe, we're going to have to adapt and live with this virus. And, I think as a fashion designer, we're going to have to integrate with each outfit fashion masks, basically.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in business news, South Africa to resume alcohol sales next week. And how some Kenyans are beating the economic meltdown brought by the coronavirus pandemic.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The South African government is lifting its ban on alcohol as the country enters a level 3 lockdown. From the 1st of June, alcohol sales will resume, but only for home consumption. Liquor sales have been banned since the start of a hard lockdown in March. The ban has cost the economy millions of dollars in lost revenue. CGTN Sumitra Naidu reports.
The liquor industry will reopen next week, but under restriction. While the industry awaits final regulations, the speculation that liquor stores will only be able to open on certain days and at certain times.
So this is a slight bit of relief. Both beer and cigarettes do provide SARS with a very healthy chunk of income. This is a very easy tax to collect, because at the end of the day, it comes through in the form of VAT, excise duty and whatever. You don't really have to do much to actually bring the money in.
Those that smoke were not so lucky. The president announced that the ban on tobacco will remain in place. Both industries have lost millions of dollars since the lockdown started in March, giving rise to illicit trade.
I would put it at something like 100 billion rand. And that's enough, just to put it in perspective, to build an RDP house for every homeless person. And the Treasury, of course, has lost its excise duty and its tax on that. What has happened, of course, it's created a huge, big black market.
What all governments around the world have to realize is this: alcohol, for better or for worse, is addictive. It's like cigarettes, it's addictive, and there will always be a market for it. And if you can't satisfy that addiction through legal channels, people will go to the illegal channels.
The ban on alcohol and tobacco has cost the economy in excess of $83 million, revenue that the country desperately needs. But it was a decision in the interest of health.
It's hard to understand what the thinking is behind it. Now what they're doing is they're going to have people queuing up at the few lawful bottle stores there are, and there are not many, and most people can't access them. They're going to buy huge quantities of liquor, carry these off somewhere, and get themselves completely smashed in parties where they will be at greater risk than if they were under controlled conditions in places where on-consumption is allowed.
Not all liquor stores will be able to reopen on the 1st of June. Many of those that were ordered to shut down over 2 months ago have suffered huge losses. The beer segment alone has lost in excess of 100,000 jobs. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
South African Airways is not planning to resume domestic flights from mid-June. This is a response from administrators of the state-owned airline, rejecting a statement from the airline a day earlier that said it would resume these flights. They added that they had not vetted Tuesday's statement from the airline and that SAA's future funding remained a key variable for any resumption of flights. President Cyril Ramaphosa said on Sunday that domestic air travel for business purposes would be phased in after June 1st when the country moves to level 3 of a 5-level alert system. SAA is under a form of bankruptcy protection and suspended all commercial passenger flights in late March when the government imposed one of Africa's strictest lockdowns. And just when you think this sector cannot take any more bad news, the International Air Transport Association said debt acquired from government bailouts and other sources would delay the recovery from the pandemic for many airlines. IATA projects that global airline debt could rise more than a quarter to $550 billion by year-end. Governments have so far announced $123 billion in total support, and nearly $70 billion of that support is liabilities that must be repaid. In addition to the government funding, there is another $52 billion from commercial sources, such as bank loans. IATA said that debt for airlines has outweighed new equity raised. That means that the sector's woes will likely last longer than the time it takes for passenger demand to recover. Officials have begun to clear a 50-kilometer-long queue of trucks at the Kenya-Uganda border. The snarl-up has built up over the last couple of days due to delays over coronavirus testing. Kenya's Cabinet Secretary for the East African Community and Regional Development, Aidan Mohamed, now says outstanding issues have been addressed. CGTN's Wukista Nyabwa reports.
The queues of trucks at the Kenya-Uganda border in Malaba stretch out into the distance in a snarl-up that built up over time. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, it would take truck drivers just 3 days to drive from the port of Mombasa to Kampala and back. The amount of time drivers now take on this trip has doubled due to the measures introduced to curb the spread of the virus. In the face of an unfolding crisis at the border, John Macharia, Kenya's Transport Cabinet Secretary, and Aidan Mohamed, the Cabinet Secretary for the East African Community and Regional Development, sought to resolve the problem. They attributed the problem to a number of disgruntled truck drivers.
We have had issues that have developed, largely a creation of our own truck drivers that has caused a 50-kilometer long delay of trucks that is now becoming a security threat.
We have put measures in place to open the border, and we have told those people who are causing problems that you do not have to drive towards the border. If you feel you have grievances in terms of you entering Uganda, then don't leave your point of departure. Don't collect cargo in Mombasa, don't collect cargo in Nairobi, heading to the border only for you to go there and cause confusion. That we said we will not accept.
The truck drivers have also complained that they have been subjected to multiple painful COVID-19 tests before they are allowed across the border.
They must get the COVID-free certificate, the COVID-19-free certificate, 48 hours before commencement of the journey. With that, upon getting to the border, you don't have to wait. It will be an express way.
Efforts to clear the queue of trucks at the Malaba border point have since commenced. It will take about 5 days to clear the backlog. Officials at the border point have been asked to work round the clock to ensure that the situation is resolved. The snarl-up at the Malaba border has hugely affected the transport of cargo from the port of Mombasa to other East Africa community countries that depend on it. Wilkis Anyabo, CGTN.
More Kenyans are starting to operate small businesses out of the boots of their cars to make ends meet. The coronavirus pandemic has hit jobs and the economy. CGTN's Terry Wangari has more.
In the wake of the coronavirus pandemic that has affected the global economy, Kenyans have taken it upon themselves to keep business going. An increasing number of Kenyans are starting to operate small businesses out of the boots of their cars to make ends meet.
My boss dropped me from work and I had to find something to do for my family since our hotels are not open at the moment. And with that forthcoming, I had to come here and start a business, start something small for my kids and something that I can get a few shillings for my family.
Most of us here are low-income earners. And so because our jobs were affected, we came here and we've started these new businesses, the groceries.
The East African nation has over 1,300 confirmed cases of the COVID-19. The disease has devastated crucial sectors of the economy like tourism and agricultural exports. Those problems have spilled over into the transport sector, where Stephen Wawero's tours and travels business has struggled to get any passengers. This has forced him to seek alternative methods.
If Corona ends, we go back to our job. We will still do this job because it has helped us to get some food, our daily bread, and we appreciate.
As the number of coronavirus cases continues to climb, Kenyans have taken the expression "necessity is the mother of invention" quite literally. And with the unknown nature of this pandemic, at least there is some form of continuity in this East African nation. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
In Zimbabwe, the country will increase the proportion of dollars gold miners can keep from their sales. The country's sole gold buyer, refiner and exporter, Fidelity Printers and Refiners, said in a statement that bigger producers would retain 70% of their money in the U.S. currency. Until now, gold miners received only 55% of their sales in dollars and the balance in local currency at a fixed exchange rate. Smaller producers, including artisanal miners, would be paid in cash at a flat rate of $45 per gram of gold. Gold producers, along with the rest of the mining sector, have been lobbying to retain all their foreign currency earnings. They argue that the Zimbabwe dollar proportion was hurting output, which fell to 27.6 tons last year from 33.2 tons in 2018. Still ahead on Africa Live. A Nigerian man overcomes great odds to establish a successful business.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Peninah, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A visually impaired man in Lagos has become an inspiring example to many after overcoming challenges to establish a successful business. 42-year-old Anyete Akpan is running his own thriving laundry business. CGTN's Deji Badmans tells us more.
As he resumes his daily work, he takes his time to put his office in order. And he does that so well that you'll hardly suspect Anyete Akpan is visually impaired. After that, he stuffs clothes into the laundry machine for washing. And for clothes that do not need to be machine washed, he washes them with his hands. Akpan has been doing this for about 20 years now, after he suddenly lost his sight.
Initially when I started, though, it was very tough for me because that time they would bring 1-2 clothes to test whether I would be able to do. That even then, I did not have anybody with me, but as they started bringing 1-2, they will bring dirty one, very dirty one. I will make sure it's become very, I make sure I put my effort to make it clean. Then as I continue doing, as they see that I can do, that's when they have confidence to bring. Even when they drop their clothes, I didn't mix their clothes up, nor burn them, so at least they have confidence.
It's hardly the kind of work many would expect a visually impaired person to undertake, but Akpan is thriving in it and has been living off proceeds of his laundry business for the 20-year period that he's been doing it.
I do arrange my clothes. If I iron them, I will arrange them myself. I arrange them accordingly. You see, like this one, I wrap them. Like this one, I'm wrapping them. This is for one person. I will arrange and wrap. Get it? So I will know the person, I will arrange it accordingly, except someone went there to scatter. If you scatter it, I will pick it according to how I keep it.
These days, his son comes around sometimes to assist him, but Akpan still does the bulk of the work. Even though things are now better than when he started out, he still battles some teething challenges. Commuting from his home to his office is often a difficult task, but he still manages to get by.
The place I'm even staying now is, the environment is not okay for me. Adibin, going from here to here, I will need someone to lead. That's a very big challenge. Adibin is a place I have everything around. Like the water, like look, this is my machine now. There's no how I get water here. I will fetch water, that is a challenge. Adibin, I have water, a place that is okay, that they run water into the machine. Then I do things, I have a machine that is okay. Those are the challenges I'm facing. Like going home, the challenge,
In a country where some people with his condition often resort to begging on the streets, Akpan has chosen to be different and has not allowed his condition to define him. And he wants others with disability to draw inspiration from him.
To first depend on yourself, even you are having one eye or one hand, at least you have to at least depend on yourself first. Don't be ashamed. Sometimes you may have challenges, then you started being ashamed of yourself. But first of all, don't be ashamed of yourself. Go out there and do it. Don't be ashamed of yourself.
Akpan has certainly overcome his physical handicap. He's taking his destiny in his own hands, and he's certainly not looking back. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos.
Coming up in sports. Kenya's team Chariot to battle Norway's team Ingra Brighton in virtual Oslo Diamond League showdown.
How How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
While the COVID-19 outbreak has prevented 2020 Wonder Diamond League meetings from going ahead in their usual fashion, the Oslo Bislett Games has created a unique clash between Team Chariot and Team Ingebrigtsen as part of the Impossible Games on the 11th of June. Racing over 2,000 meters, the reigning and 2017 men 1,500 meters world champions Timothy Chariot and Elijah Manangoi from Kenya will form Team Chariot, which will run in Nairobi. The Ingebrigtsen brothers, Henrik, Philippe and Jacob, will run at the Bislett Stadium in a race named the Mori